Well, a few weeks ago, we discussed, if you remember, what may be the most easily deceived sense that we have. Out of the senses that we have are our hearing, our smell, our sight, our touch. Probably the most easily deceived sense of those is our sight. You remember this? It's a sense that we should be thankful that we have. I'm thankful that I can physically see, that I have my eyesight. Noticed just in the last year that a few things I'm not seeing as well as I used to, but I'm thankful that I have it. But there's an interesting connection between our sight, our physical eyesight, what we perceive, and what's in our heart. Because sight can influence our heart. What we see and perceive can influence what's in our heart. But our heart can also influence the things that we see, the way we perceive them. And back a few Torah portions ago, we remember this. In Numbers 13, they traveled and returned to Moses, Aaron, and the entire community of Bnei Israel at Kadesh in the wilderness of Paran. They gave their report to them and the entire assembly. They showed the land's fruit. They gave their account to him and said, "We went into the land where you sent us. Indeed, it is flowing with milk and honey. This is some of its fruit. Except the people living in the land are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the sons of Anak there." So did what they see, what they physically looked at, was that affecting what was in their heart? Or was it what was in their heart already affecting what they saw, what they perceived? You know, because what was there, what they were physically looking at, that is what it was. I mean, that was a fact. You know, I can say that the Torah scroll's not sitting there, but that doesn't change the fact of it being there or not. That fact was present. What they saw was there. When they looked out and they saw the cities being fortified, they were fortified. They were very large. The people living in the land were powerful. The sons of Anak were there. But when they looked out and they saw all of that, what they perceived, how that registered, was impossible. They looked at it and they saw impossible. They looked at it and they saw defeat. They looked at it and they saw death. You know, from that point on, everything became doom and gloom. That was all they could see. And we know how that turned out, what came as a result of that perception. And it led to an exile. And now we come to this week's double portion. And here we are, some 39 going on 40 years later. And we're back after all this wandering, after this time of exile. They're back on the border, back on the cusp of entering the promised kingdom again. And we come to this in Numbers 32. The sons of Reuben and Gad had very large herds and flocks, and they saw that the territory of Yazer and Gilead were ideal for livestock. So here we have, they're up to the same point basically, and they're looking out physically and they're seeing, taking a look at what they're seeing. And when I read this verse, the first thing that it reminds me of, this kind of phrasing, of a similar event that took place back in Genesis 13. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the whole area surrounding the Jordan was well watered in its entirety, before Adonai destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like Adonai's garden, like the land of Egypt till you come to Zoar. So Lot chose for himself the whole area surrounding the Jordan. Lot journeyed to the east and they separated from each other. So the sons of Gad and Reuben, just like Lot, used their eyes. It's interesting, they're both around the Jordan. And some similar results come as a result of what they do here. Lot separates from Abraham. He separates from the promise, separates from the covenant. And what these 2.5 tribes do is they separate from the rest of Israel, from the covenants and the promise, in a sense. And, when separation always brings challenges, does it not? Whenever we're separated from each other, can be assumptions made because the other party is not there to clear up misunderstandings. Separation's hard. As we are at this time going through this time of separation from our Father, it can be tough. But the sons of Gad and Reuben come to Moses, and they take a look, and they see that the land's good for livestock, and they say, "If we have found favor in your eyes, let this territory be given to your servants as a possession. Don't make us cross the Jordan." Moses hears this statement, and he replies, "Should your countrymen go to war while you dwell here? Why do you dishearten Bnei Israel from going across to the land that Adonai has given to them? Your fathers did this when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to look over the land. They went up to the valley of Eshcol and viewed the land, but they discouraged the hearts of Bnei Israel not to enter the land which Adonai had given them. The anger of Adonai was aroused that day, and he swore an oath, saying, 'The men who came out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward will not see the land I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for they have not followed after me with a whole heart, except Caleb son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, and Joshua son of Nun, for they were wholehearted after Adonai.' And the anger of Adonai burned against Israel, and he caused them to wander in the wilderness 40 years until all the generation doing that evil in Adonai's sight was gone." We see that connection right in here of how sight and the heart. We had 10 men that their heart wasn't with the Lord and what they saw, and then we have Caleb and Joshua that looked out and they saw the exact same thing as the 10 did. And their heart was with the Lord, and they perceived something completely different. Moses continues, "Now look, here you stand in the place of your fathers as a brood of sinful men to add more to Adonai's great wrath against Israel. If you turn away from him, he will repeat again, leaving this people in the wilderness, you being the cause of this people's destruction." So we talked about the power of sight a few weeks ago, and we can see what sight leads to, what we perceive. What's in our heart leads to what we see, what we perceive, and all that can wind up with fear. We'll talk about the power of fear. And look at Moses. Almost 40 years later from this event, he hears just that one phrase, and immediately, fear just sets in. He's like, uh-oh, we've been here before. This didn't go so well the last time. Kind of like deja vu. Anybody have a moment where in their life where they feel like, I've been here before, this didn't go so well the last time, and I'm about to repeat something. And when that happens, fear can immediately set in. But fear, Yod Resh Aleph, Yara. When we think of fear, oftentimes we kind of think, at least I do, I think of the the shrinking back kind of fear, the trembling, being afraid. That's what I think of fear when the word first comes to mind. But yirah is used with a lot more definition than that. Fear has a broader definition than just that. It is to be afraid. It's used to be afraid, what we're used to seeing, but it also to stand in awe of or to inspire reverence. Everyone has fear. We all have fear with something. So remembering back when they first went to enter the land, the 10 spies, they come back. They give their report on what they saw, what they perceived, and the result of that was it discouraged Israel. What they saw discouraged Israel, and Joshua responded to their report with, "Don't rebel against Adonai. Don't be afraid of the people of the land. They will be food for us. The protection over them is gone. Adonai is with us. Do not fear them." Don't be afraid. Don't stand in awe of them. Don't give them reverence. Fear breeds. It does. One person's fear can spread so quickly. All through that night, the entire community raised up their voices. The people wept. All Bnei Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole community said, "If only we had died in Egypt, if only we died in this wilderness. Why is Adonai bringing us to this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be like plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt?" Just doom and gloom. All the past woes, all the past troubles, all the difficulties and trials and tribulations they had, all of a sudden just seemed like paradise. Nothing's even happened to them. Physically, nothing has happened here. But all of a sudden, all that looks like paradise, and everything they're looking at looks just doom and gloom. They forget that their children were already plunder. Moses, standing in front of them, is a testimony to the fact he was one of the few survivors left of the plundering of their children. And we're really capable of thinking the same way. It's a better place where we used to be. This path that the Lord has me on, man, this is a tough one. I'm never gonna make it. This path this is rough, and that can be a physical path, maybe something physically we're going through, maybe something spiritual, our spiritual path that we're on, maybe even an emotional path. In this path of faith, I know it can be a tough one. Walking this path is tough. And 10 men, these 10 spies, had such a profound influence. I mean, the fear of this minion, their fear affected over 600,000 in the fighting forces of Israel. Just 10 in the entire army is affected because of this. And 40 years later, after this fact, Moses reminds them that here we are. There's a possibility of doing this all over again. Why do you dishearten Bnei Israel from going across the land Adonai has given to them? Your fathers did this when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to look over the land. They went up to the valley of Eshcol and viewed the land, but they discouraged the hearts of Bnei Israel not to enter the land which Adonai had given them. What was in their hearts affected what they saw and perceived, which affected the hearts of all the rest of Israel, which affected what they saw and perceived. All they could see, doom and gloom, and everything was better back where they came from. It's a vicious cycle, that cycle of fear. And Joshua later on recounts this event. He says, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of Adonai, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him back word as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my fellows that went up with me made the heart of the people melt with fear. But I fully followed Adonai, my God. Fear. It really is. It's a form of worship. When you stand in awe of something or someone, or give reverence to something or someone, you're placing it above you. And that something or someone is what maintains control. What you fear is kind of what you worship. And many of us can succumb to fear at different times. And sometimes that fear comes about when we don't have control, when we have lost control over something. But when you think about it, fear is really our feeble attempt at maintaining control over a situation, because we're saying the battle isn't his, it's ours. I have to deal with this. I'm not letting him have this. I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to work it all out. And as I fear this person or situation or whatever it may be, I'm giving that the power and control over my life. Yeshua says this in Luke 21 about days to come. There will be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and upon the earth nations will be confused by the roaring of the sea and its waves. People will lose heart from fear and anticipation of what is overtaking the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. What we see and perceive affects our heart, and then the vicious cycle round and round. And and you take a look at this statement here, and if your heart's not after the Lord, and you take a look at this, and you see all this happening with the sun, the moon, the stars, everything going on with the nations, the sea, its waves, people losing heart from fear, the powers of heaven shaken, you can take a look at that and just say, doom and gloom, we're all going to die. But if you take a look at it when your heart is after the Lord, when you're wholeheartedly after him, there will be signs. It's like a sign of something. This isn't just some random thing going on. He's giving a sign. And you look at things going on with nations that dominate and control the world, and all of a sudden they're confused and they're losing that control. And people losing heart from fear and anticipate everything that's coming about where, they're out of control now. You take a look at that and you see all that happening, and if your heart's after the Lord, what would you be thinking? It's close. It's close. It's at the door. He's in control, and he's about to show that. So you can take heart from this, or you can lose heart from this. And in every situation, I'm just seeing this all the time, every day. Every situation, every topic that comes up, the key to all of our issues and struggles really is the central declaration, the greatest commandment, the first commandment. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. The first part, the Shema. We choose what to fear. And how many times in the last few years can you admit to times of fear, especially in these last few years? You didn't know if you were going to be able to keep your house, perhaps. You didn't know if you were going to be able to keep your job. Maybe it was food. You didn't know if you were going to be able to maintain and keep toilet paper. That's crazy, but people feared that. That's just nuts to think about, that people let toilet paper control them. Fear for our health. Some feared for their lives through this. We can fear a virus. We can fear an injection. Fear no man, for the judgment is God's. Adonai is my light and my salvation. Whom should I fear? Adonai is the stronghold of my life. Whom should I dread? When evildoers approached me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my foes, they stumbled and fell. Though an army camp besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war breaks out against me, even then I will be confident. When we're wholeheartedly after the Lord, evildoers, adversaries, foes, armies, wars, rumors of wars, through all of that, we can be confident He's got this. The land ahead, the promised kingdom, it's a very good land. It does flow. Surely it does flow with milk and honey. We have had a taste of it. We've tasted and seen that the Lord is good. But it's just a taste. We haven't even begun to partake of the meal. I sought Adonai, and He answered me and delivered me from all my fears. In God I keep praising His word. In God I trust. I will not fear. What can mere flesh do to me? How long does this flesh last? Almost all of us are acquainted with death, some of us recently. And this flesh, if it doesn't last, if this is just a temporary thing, why would we want to worship it by fearing what it can do? Adonai is for me. I will not fear. What can man do to me? Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but one who trusts in Adonai will be kept safe. It's just amazing how much I fear man, how much we all can fear man and fear flesh. Forget the secular things for a moment. You take just our walk of faith. When we're wholeheartedly not after the Lord, when we're kind of in between, we can fear even in our walk of faith. Maybe it's from mainstream Christianity, fear of family, what they're going to think, fear of pastors and churches, and maybe how they're going to perceive and look at us. On the other hand, we can also fear from mainstream Judaism, perhaps, fear of what synagogues and rabbis may think of our walk. And can we be more afraid of what others think and what they're going to say? Are we really going to submit ourselves and worship churches and rabbis and pastors and synagogues? Or is it all about what He has to say about our walk? Joshua said to them, "Never fear, be dismayed. Chazak, be strong, for thus will Adonai do to all your enemies whom you will fight." Do we trust Him, the Lord, with our eternity? I think most of us readily say that, oh yeah, when I die, He's got me. I'll be with Him forever. We can almost blindly just trust Him with that, hopefully. But is Adonai all-powerful? Is He all-present? Is He all-knowing? Indeed, even the hairs of your head are all numbered, so do not fear. You are more valuable than many sparrows. So what about the present? Do you even know the number of your hair on your head? Even if I counted it right now, it wouldn't last very long because I'm starting to lose it quicker and quicker. So I'd maintain that for a very short period of time. But if I can't even maintain control over the count of my hairs, something I really don't have much control at all, do I? I say to you, my friends, you should not be afraid of those who kill the body, since after this they have nothing more they can do. You know, their power and ability, it stops right there. That's it. We spend so much time, what we think of our existence is just in the body. But it's such a short blip in the grand scheme of things. And so whatever we're fearing has very, very limited control and power. So no matter what it is we're fearing, it stops right there at that moment. And in our walk of faith, you know, we have a choice. Just like they did, we come to the brink of the Jordan again. And at this moment, you know, we could choose to cross from death to life, unrighteousness to righteousness, Torahlessness to Torah, fear to fear. We can go from one fear to another fear. You know, this the first time they came to the Jordan, they couldn't cross. Chose not to cross. Now they come back to the Jordan. Will we cross this time? But I'll show you whom you should fear. Fear the one who, after the killing, has authority to cast into Gehenna. Yes, I tell you, fear this one. Who will you worship? You're going to fear that which has limited control? Or do we choose to fear the one who has all authority on heaven and earth? Adonai Savot, him will you sanctify, and let him be your fear, trembling at him. You know, when he talked a few weeks ago about sight, and he brought up the zizit, that it was a reminder that when you looked and you saw, it reminded you who you should fear. That you would look and see and say, I'm to obey him, remember his commandments. And you know, with me, when I first approached these, I looked at it and I go, oh, I don't think I want to do that, because how is it going to look? How am I going to be perceived? What are people going to think and say and do? And was more concerned about what others thought than what it was supposed to direct to of fearing him. You know, don't desire Egypt. Don't desire to go back from the brink of the Jordan. Let's not be content to be in between. Yeah, we're out of Egypt, but we're not in the kingdom yet. And we can get to this halfway place and all of a sudden find a place of contentment. Oh, well, it's pretty good now. I've been removed from certain things that used to trouble me and bog me down, and he's freed me from that, but we don't press on. You know, press on. I'm pressing on the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. Praying as I'm onward bound, Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Though some may dwell where these abound, my prayer, my aim is higher ground. The fear of Adonai is clean, enduring forever. So now, O Israel, what does Adonai your God require of you? But to fear Adonai your God, to walk in all his ways and love him, and to serve Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul. The Shema again, the Vahafta. Like Joshua and Caleb, you're after after him with a whole heart, the kingdom ahead is a good land. You know, and when we're fearing the one who has all authority in heaven and earth, that fear brings a lack of worry. Anybody struggle with worry in here? Some of us are more prone than others, but you know, what will we eat? What will we drink? What are we going to wear? What's going to happen tomorrow? I've got to have control over it. I got to know what's going on. And we can give all these things our worship. And we can give all these things our control. But those that fear God, by walking in his ways, he'll be like a tree planted by the waters, spreading out its roots by a stream. It has no fear when heat comes, but its leaves will be green. It does not worry in a year of drought, nor depart from yielding fruit. You know, no matter what comes on this earth, the heat, the drought, no matter what is happening, you don't have to worry. But we also need to be very careful about our definition of fearing the Lord. Got to be very careful about that. Isaiah 29:13, so Adonai says, since these people draw near with their mouths and honor me with their lips, yet their hearts are far from me, and their fear of me is a mitzvah taught by men. And you know, Christianity and Judaism both have become so full of mitzvahs, so full of commandments taught by men. In the name of fearing God, sometimes some things can be good. They can direct us down a good path and help guide. But when we strictly, blindly follow the rulings of men, in the name of fearing God, we're not really fearing God at all. We're really fearing men. And how many times Yeshua had to address this? That in the name of obeying God, create a whole new system that ends up removing us from following him. So we need to be careful about our definition of fearing God when we're walking in his ways, because he needs to be the number one authority. What others have to say about it, it's commentary. It can help, but that's not the authority. Fearing God brings blessing. We all want blessing, right? He will bless those who fear Adonai, the small, together with the great. So when we walk in his rulings and instruction, you know, we can get blessing. But don't get the idea that all the good and all the blessing is on this side of the Jordan. Because a lot of people teach that. You do X, Y, and Z. Just do these 1, 2, 3, and you're going to have all the wealth and benefits and happiness and health and all that kind of stuff. We're not in the kingdom yet. We're still on this side of the Jordan. It's a whole lot better over on the other side. It brings happiness. Hallelujah. Happy is the man who fears Adonai, who delights greatly in his mitzvot. When we delight in his commandments, in his ways, it brings happiness. I'm beginning to understand that happiness and all the other things of life are fleeting at best. But walking in his ways and obeying him truly is where joy and happiness comes. Brings a fulfillment of desires. You know, we all have wishes and wants and desires and things we like. But when we fear him and obey him, and he becomes the center of our heart, does not he become our desire? He will fulfill the desire of those who fear him. He will hear their cry and save them. It also talks of it bringing prolonged life. The fear of Adonai prolongs life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. Prolongs life. How long does it prolong it? We want to talk in just the physical sense, right? Fearing God, seeking Him. If you seek me with all your heart, if you seek me, you shall find me, if you search for me with all your heart. And if we truly are searching for Him, we'll find Yeshua, we'll find salvation. And that leads, fearing Him leads to eternal life. It brings smooth paths. If only there were such a heart in them to fear me and keep all my mitzvot always, so that it might go well with them and with their children forever. Life more abundant. His ways, His Torah, His instruction brings freedom. Egypt doesn't begin to compare to the kingdom. Not at all. No matter how it looks back there, it doesn't compare. So again, don't be content to be in between with the status quo. It's not good. It brings being on the winning side. None of us want to be on the losing side. Read this account in 2 Kings. Now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was surrounding the city. So his attendant said to him, "Alas, my master, what are we going to do?" He's looking, he's seeing again. He's perceiving only a certain way, and this is about to affect his heart. Starting down that path. "Fear not," he replied, "for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." More to sight than what we can physically perceive. There's more going on here than what we're looking at. Then Elisha prayed and said, "Adonai, please open his eyes." He's seeing, but his eyes aren't even open. "That he may see." Then Adonai opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Right now we're seeing through a glass darkly. All our sight is partially blinded. It talks about Israel's sight being partially blinded to Messiah. And the nations too are blinded, partially blinded. We can come from a background where we don't fully understand who he was and what his mission was. Just partially understand. But it talks about when the blindness is removed from Israel, it is life from the dead. Fearing God brings confidence. In the fear of Adonai, one has strong confidence. It will be a refuge for his children. The same way that the 10 being disheartened brought the nation to dismay, to doom and gloom. But fear of God, when we swap that around to fearing God, it brings confidence. And our confidence then, imagine what it would have been like if those 10, just like Joshua and Caleb, would have been just as confident because they were wholeheartedly after him. It went into the kingdom then, not another 40 years of exile. And it passes on to your children. Just the way fear breeds, just depends on what you're fearing. "These things I have spoken to you, so that in me you may have shalom. In the world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." Confidence, no matter what your trial or trouble is, he has overcome it. Whatever you can think about that you're afraid of or fearing, whatever it is, he's overcome it. It's why Yeshua had to come in the flesh, to show victory can be had in all issues of life. God's instructions can be followed. We can fear him in this flesh. It brings knowing God. Then you will know the fear of Adonai and discover the knowledge of God. And when we're fearing him, it leads to obedience. And obedience means we have to be listening to him, right? We're listening to him talking. And that's how we can come to know him better. We can know him in the power of his resurrection. Ecclesiastes 12 says, a final word, when all has been heard, fear God and keep his mitzvot, for this applies to all mankind. This is the whole duty of man, for all mankind, not just the Jew, all man. You know, yirah, fear. It first appears in Genesis 3:10. God asks Adam, Adam, where art thou? And he says, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid. Fear. This was a sudden change. Was fear present prior to this? No. You know, why now was there fear? I want to close with this thought from 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. For fear has to do with punishment. And the one who fears has not been made perfect in love. That's really a deep thought to think about, because we're fearing God, but there's a reason that we're fearing him right now. We're not made perfect yet. But we know there's coming a day when our fear of God won't even be needed anymore, because we will be made perfect. We're not there yet. So anyone that says that they don't need that anymore, we'll talk after, but we're not there yet. But when this mortal finally has cast off immortality, or our mortal is cast off and immortality reigns, we will be able to behold him without fear, because we'll be made perfect. And with that in mind, let's not be content on this side of the kingdom, on this side of the Jordan. It may look like it's well watered and good for something, but it's not as good as being on the other side. Being content where we're at right now is going to have a lot of challenges, because we're really separating ourselves from those that have gone on before that are with him. You know, may his kingdom come and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And may it be soon and in our day.